Thank you for having me so much. Thank you. And I feel really inspired by KR deciding to read that poem because I think that oftentimes we decide not to talk about, write about, think about the bad things. And I guess I tend to think of poetry as, I used to think that like love poems were really out of style. And then I realized that all poetry they're all love poems. They're just different kinds of love poems. And sometimes they're to ourselves, sometimes they're about healing, sometimes they're to support the people that we see that are being harmed every day. And when I was reflecting on what to read tonight, and looking at my work, I realized that water does feature in my work. I had a moment of panic. I was like, wait a minute, I have animals, but no water. And then I was like, no, I have water. And when water shows up, it shows up, I think, intensely. And it's usually heavy subjects. So then I was like, oh, bummer for everybody who's coming. But then I decided to think about the love part. So I'll just say that some of the poetry that I'm reading is dark, and I'll say that it's written with love, and it's hopeful, even if it's talking about something dark. Oh, and I thought about water really differently too. Difficult child. Mother tearing her clothes off under an arc of sprinklers. Thirsty blades beneath her catch light in the tiny pebbles of false rain. Her closed eyes smile wide. She's finding God at the cross streets of 16th and Dolores. Dolores, from dolor meaning pain and sorrow. I translate words in my head. The nuns have taught me Latin as best they can. I'm a difficult child, they say. In the sun, my mother's nakedness, alive against the bleached adobe landmark. Mission Dolores. Behind the little mission is a great big church with spires, a place of pews and strangers with blossoming mouths, talking about the lunatic. I look into my mother's fragmented and tender eyes, and when she asks, "Do you hear the voices too?" I'm able to say, "Yes, I hear them. I hear them talking all the time." Woo. I used to drive across the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, and it kind of became like a meditation. I drove over that same pass where you drive past San Quentin, and I just could not get over that prison. And this is a senryu, which is like a haiku, but a little different. The focus is either satire or a serious political topic. San Quentin Senryu. Building a prison in a beautiful place. Act of kindness, cruelty. I like to read that one twice because it's so little. San Quentin Senryu. Building a prison in a beautiful place. Act of kindness, cruelty. And of course, I feel like I'm thinking a lot about our history, this country's history right now. And there's something about water that's really part of our history. The melancholy of US architecture. If you open the box, you may find walls that end in sky. Everything built now stands dilapidated in the rusted landscapes of deserts. Open sand, and it may lead to Ghana, where water once broke stone. Open water, and you may find a flood of ships, cotton, indigo, and quills. Declarations, emancipations, and the lost 40 acres and a mule, taking their place next to the history of us. And this is one of the first ones I thought about when Paul contacted me. And it was also the one that I pulled the tab off when I got here. I just thought, maybe I just won't read this one. So thank you. Swamp Thing. Lessons learned early. How when you tried to play dodgeball and the ball hit you in the face, and freckled-faced Saeed Abdel had so many questions, took you behind the school, and would you let him kiss you? And would you let him go to second base? You could only think of the red and dimpled ball meeting your face, the black eyes that followed your mother, and you held back. And you did not understand second base. Still, Saeed Abdel's freckles surrounded by flesh flushed pink as he insisted, but I'm experienced. You heard through the vine, which was a snaked swamp, a mangrove filled with serpents, that Saeed was experienced because he practiced touching his little cousin's breasts when they found themselves alone. Felt her up, he said. She would hide under the bed, he said. Only certain creatures survive brackish water. Saeed told everyone first and second and even third base. For the rest of that year, there were chants in your wake. You were the last to be picked for the team. It was a well-known fact that when something came at you fast, you froze. You were assemblage of saline and troubled root systems, mangle of habitat. You being woman, being girl, you pillar of salt. You will never be good at group sports. Alligator and cottonmouth whispers about those types of girls rustle through the feather bush. When I thought about this building, I thought about this poem. Not so ancient mariner. The launch of a ship involves a certain sullying, taking her by the helm, and breaking of a bottle over the breasts of her prow, the spume bubbling in a public spectacle to mark her owned. The mermaid, kraken, stingray, and mollusk watch for the wave of dead albatross in swan songs. Young men are always encouraged to travel, taught they are destined to be gentlemen and explorers. They set off to conquer the crustacea of your ocean floor, the mangled root of your mangrove, the vortex of your eddy, the lichen of your tide pools, the stars of your regeneration. They are told it is their duty to return to land and tell tales, but the rite of passage is hers.
Damn.
Water is cool, and it's also, when it's cool, really cool, it's ice, right? Yeah. Polar. Yeah. I am in search of the ice fish maw, a cold red, a question of expectation. This is a thought that excites me. You're glacial, prickly as the glass worm, that deep sea creature, the sparkle of your inner Antarctic, and I, bottom trawl, spongy and bat-starred, full up with dark ribbons, am held tight by tentacles. The crawl and squirm is a testament that I am not afraid of your atmosphere. So I enter through the slush and ice, understand it's best not to excite. The hunt, 6 months of night and 6 months of light. Instead, content and more to the thrill of our doom, strange genesis, a right crocodile fish and its krill. And this is my last poem. And I don't often read this poem, but I felt like it was appropriate. The End of Eros. Should I tell you, sweet bitter, ours are sparrows, hollow-boned and ethereal. Sweet bitter, we are undulating under the current. We have hardened and grown scales. Sweet, bitter, should I tell you, there is nothing but silence between us. To end is all that we can do, now that we know each other so well. Thank you.